40 times. 40 savage strikes, each one more brutal than the last. As Nadia El-Dip's blood spilled on the ground, her cries for help were silenced by the overwhelming force of Adam Bahar's rage. What started as an obsessive relationship ended in a night of unimaginable horror, with Nadia stabbed again and again by the man who claimed to love her. This is the chilling story of a 22-year-old university student whose life was brutally taken by her obsessive ex-boyfriend, a man who then turned his violence toward the police. The pain Nadia endured that night is haunting, and today we're going to walk through the series of events that led to this heartbreaking crime. Who Nadia El-Dip was before the nightmare began. Before her life was cruelly taken away, Nadia El-Dip was much more than just another university student. She was a vibrant, intelligent young woman who had so much ahead of her. At only 22, she was pursuing a degree with the dream of becoming a legal assistant, and her ambitions did not stop there. She hoped to go further, to become a lawyer one day. Nadia cared deeply about making a difference in the world, especially when it came to women's rights and supporting LGBTQ+ issues. She was passionate about helping others and fighting for equality, something that stood out to those who knew her best. Nadia's family had moved to Canada from Lebanon in search of a better life, bringing with them a rich cultural heritage. Like so many immigrant families, they faced challenges, but they also thrived, building a new home and community in Canada. Nadia was proud of her Lebanese roots and carried her family's values of hard work, love, and respect with her. Her family described her as loving and kind, someone who was always smiling and who wanted nothing but peace and happiness for those around her. She was not just focused on her studies. Nadia was social and outgoing, the type of person who always made time for her friends. Those close to her remember her as loyal, someone who could be trusted with anything. She had a bright future, filled with potential, and was determined to make her mark on the world. But all of that was tragically cut short in a way no one could have ever predicted. It is heartbreaking to think that someone so full of life and promise could become the victim of such a brutal and senseless crime. Toxic love red flags that went unnoticed. Nadia El-Dip crossed paths with Adam Bahar in what seemed like an ordinary way. They met through mutual connections, and for a brief period, Nadia allowed him into her life. However, what started as a seemingly innocent relationship quickly turned toxic. Their relationship was short, lasting only a few months, but in that time, Adam's behavior began to reveal troubling signs. He became possessive and controlling, traits that often go unnoticed in the early stages of relationships, but, looking back, stand out as clear red flags. One of the early indicators was Adam's attempts to control Nadia's choices. He would try to dictate how she dressed and who she spent her time with, constantly inserting himself into her personal decisions. Nadia, a strong and independent young woman, resisted these efforts, but Adam's actions were already a sign that his love was not healthy. Friends noticed changes in Nadia, how she began to feel more tense and withdrawn, though she never openly spoke about what was happening. Unfortunately, many of these warning signs went unnoticed, or perhaps they were brushed aside because it is so easy to dismiss controlling behavior as jealousy or protectiveness. The relationship came to an end when Nadia decided to break up with Adam. She wanted to focus on her future, her studies, and her goals. She had dreams of building a meaningful career and knew that Adam's behavior was becoming a distraction and a source of stress. Breaking up with him was her way of reclaiming control over her life and steering her path back toward her ambitions. But Adam did not take it well. In fact, he became fixated on her, his behavior crossing the line from being upset to becoming dangerously obsessed. Looking back, the red flags were there. Adam's need to control Nadia, his increasing possessiveness, and his inability to accept the breakup. At the time, however, it was easy for Nadia and those around her to see these behaviors as just the pain of a relationship ending. No one could have imagined the depth of Adam's obsession, or that it would lead to such a horrific outcome. In many cases like this, toxic love can be hard to recognize until it is too late, leaving victims like Nadia vulnerable to escalating violence. Not the night of terror. Nadia disappeared. March 24th, 2018, started as a regular Saturday night for 22-year-old Nadia El Dip. She had plans to spend the evening out with her friends at a shisha bar in Montreal. It was a place she frequented, where she could relax, laugh, and enjoy herself after a long week. But that night, something unexpected happened. She ran into Adam Bahar. Despite their brief and tumultuous relationship, which had ended months earlier, Adam was there, and their paths crossed once again. At first, it seemed like a simple conversation between two people who had once been close. Nadia, ever polite and level-headed, engaged in the conversation without showing signs of distress to her friends. However, what her friends and those around her did not know was how manipulative Adam had become. Over the course of their brief interaction, Adam somehow convinced Nadia to leave the bar with him. Perhaps he promised her something, or maybe she thought it was easier to diffuse the situation by going with him temporarily. Whatever his words were, they convinced Nadia to step away from her friends, and that was the last time they would see her alive. At around 11 p.m., as she left with Adam, Nadia sent a chilling message to one of her friends. The text expressed concern. It hinted at trouble. Nadia wrote that Adam was refusing to take her back to her car. She was in a state of unease but was not yet panicked. Her instincts were telling her something was not right, and though she tried to handle it on her own, it was clear that Adam was not letting her leave. After sending that text, Nadia fell silent. As the hours passed, Nadia's family began to worry. It was not like her to disappear without letting anyone know where she was. By the early morning hours of March 25th, her family's anxiety had turned into outright fear. Her sister, Rasha, knew something was terribly wrong. Nadia had not returned home, and there had been no word from her since the ominous message to her friend the previous night. Rasha decided to retrace Nadia's steps. She drove to the shisha bar where Nadia had been earlier, hoping for some kind of clue. It was there, in the parking lot, that Rasha's worst fears started to come true. She found Nadia's car, parked and untouched. Her heart sank when she noticed that Nadia's personal belongings were still inside, including her phone and purse. The fact that Nadia had left without her things was a sign that something had gone terribly wrong. As Rasha stood there, staring at her sister's abandoned car, the pieces began to fall into place. Nadia's sudden silence, the disturbing text, and now this. Everything pointed to the grim reality that Nadia was in danger, and time was running out. The brutal discovery: Nadia found, stabbed 40 times. 5 days after Nadia El Dip disappeared, the truth behind her fate came to light in the most horrifying way possible. On March 29, 2018, the police discovered her lifeless body in the backyard of a home in Montreal's Lachine borough. The house belonged to Adam Bahar's family, and it was there, on that cold, unforgiving ground, that Nadia's life had been violently stolen from her. The discovery was a nightmare that no family should ever have to experience. When the police arrived, they were met with a chilling scene. Nadia's body had been hidden, but the sheer brutality of what had been done to her could not be covered up. Investigators confirmed her identity through forensic evidence and began piecing together what had led to such a gruesome outcome. It was not just the fact that she had been murdered. It was the savagery of the attack that shocked everyone. The autopsy report revealed the full extent of the violence. Nadia had been stabbed 40 times. Each stab wound represented Adam's growing rage, his desperate need for control, and his twisted obsession. She had also been shot twice. The combination of these injuries made it clear that Nadia had fought for her life in those final moments. She had tried to escape, but Adam's determination to harm her was relentless. The attack took place after Adam lured Nadia back to his family's house, a place she had likely visited before during their brief relationship. As the night wore on, Adam's attempts to win Nadia back turned dark. When Nadia refused his advances and made it clear that she wanted nothing to do with him, something snapped inside him. It was in that moment, in the house that should have been a safe space, that Adam's obsession boiled over into pure violence. At some point, Nadia managed to break free from Adam's grip. Desperate to get away, she made a run for her life, trying to escape the car they had been sitting in. But Adam was not far behind. He chased her down like a predator hunting prey, refusing to let her go. He caught up to her in the backyard, where the final brutal attack took place. It was there, out in the open, that he unleashed his fury, stabbing her repeatedly as she fought for her life. What is especially horrifying is that Nadia was not just attacked once. After stabbing her, Adam then shot her twice, as though the brutal stabbing was not enough to satisfy his need for control. It was a cold and calculated end to a young woman's life, one that left an indelible mark on everyone who heard the story. Reflecting on the violence Nadia endured is difficult. The sheer brutality of it all is something that feels almost incomprehensible. It is hard to imagine someone inflicting such pain on another human being, especially someone they once claimed to care about. Nadia's only crime was rejecting Adam and wanting to move on with her life. For that, she paid the ultimate price. This kind of violence is not just an act of rage, it is the culmination of Adam's obsessive need to control Nadia. It speaks to a much larger issue of domestic violence, where many women, just like Nadia, become victims of people they thought they knew. As we hear about her last moments, it is impossible not to feel the overwhelming tragedy of her story, a life filled with promise, taken so cruelly by the very person who claimed to love her.